Alright. This day, we commemorate one of the several things, the horrible things that happened on Shavuot of Tammuz. Quite possibly one of the most difficult for us to connect to, but probably one of the most devastating, is that this was when the Korban Atonement ceased to be marked with the Korban Atonement. Yushalmi says that actually what happened was that they had a whole system that they would bring up the sheep, that the Romans, they let them still bring the sheep for the Korban Atonement, and they would put them in a basket and have an elevator system to bring it up by the wall, and that's how they would bring it in. So Shavuot of Tammuz, by Sheni, when they gave them the sheep, they thought it was a sheep, they're waiting to bring it up, the Kahanim to bring it up, and they opened up the basket, and they saw the Davar Acher. It was a pig, a chazer. And actually, Poe, he has a story about this. But I don't know how he knew the Yushalmi, but he has a story like this. Anyway, what was the Korban Atonement? What's the whole idea of the Korban Atonement? And what does that have to do with us? Last week's Parsha, we read about the Korban Atonement. Not only that, but about all the Korbanos of all the Yom Tovim. Parsha Pinchas. And before the Korban Atonement, it talks about when Moshe Rabbeinu gives the smicha to Yehoshua ben Nun to be his Mamala Makim, to be his successor as leader of Klal Yisrael. And it's very interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu, he invokes a name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, a title, Kol Ruchos Kol Basar. That Hashem is the God of the spirit of all flesh. And then we learned the Korban Atonement after that was a burnt offering, an oiler. It was totally burnt up, nothing was left behind, nothing was eaten. The skin was left to the Kahanim to use, but the part that went on the staff was all burnt up. It reminds me always of the story of the Heilige Rabbi Zisha. The Rabbi Zisha, one time he put his hand in the fire, and quickly his hand, just by virtue of reflex, jumped back. And he said, "V'yez Gashmi is the hand from Zisha." He said, how physical, how mundane is this hand of Zisha? And it can't bear to be put into a fire? Now, what kind of statement is that? The Rabbi Zisha was an honor of Oid. He was a very, very humble person. How could he make such a statement that he was surprised that his hand should walk back, should come back from the fire? I think the answer to that is that we learn from the leadership that when Moshe Rabbeinu David, that it should be Ruchos L'Chol Basar. It should be this aspect of the spirit of all flesh, that there should be a union of Ruchnius and Gashmius together. And that's what we learn from the Korban Atonement. Because here's a Davar Gashmi, a Shefsula, a Avidas, and we put it, and we make it totally Oil Atonement. Oil Atonement is Tir Bar Kina. The concept of that is that it's both totally physical and totally spiritual. And that is what the Rebbe Zisha was surprised by. That the Rebbe Zisha was a spiritual person, that's no kun, that's no fella. We knew he was a totally spiritual person. But he could be totally physical and totally spiritual simultaneously. That he was the Rebbe Zisha, that he was a leader of leaders. That is what surprised him. That was an aspect of his anivus, to say such a thing, that his hand went back. And how does one accomplish that? How can one get to that level of combining spirituality with physicality? We all need to be leaders. We're all here. We all have to be an example to those around us. The answer is to always be going up. Constantly going up. The Tzuya Bar Sinai is following the way of Har Sinai, the Derech HaTorah. we entered now into the 3 weeks. I remember I heard from Tzimmer Silverberg, actually, that he should be well. In Shalayim, many times we always say that the 3 weeks, we count up all the Yom Tovim that we have, like we said before, the Parshas Pinchas and all the Korbanos of the Yom Tovim. It comes also to 3 weeks altogether. Alright, just about. And so, he said that Koralai Moed, calling out a holiday, calling out a Yom Tov, really the potential within each and one of these days of the 3 weeks is connected, mechuvin, the term Kadeshim say, is mechuvin to one of the Yom Tovim. And ultimately, that's what we have to be involved with, that through the availus of the 3 weeks, and through this avoida of availus of the we could be zoicher to seeing to all the Yom Tovim. And that's exactly what we're waiting for, the Hafez for him, the Sasma, the Yavin, the Simcha, that we're waiting for these days, like the Rabbi Zechariah said, that all these, the fast that we observe should be turned around, like we said in the Slichas this morning, should be turned around to days of Simcha, and that's because within that is the potential that will go into the actual, and we're waiting for that actual to come out, and then the Shem we should see, and the way to do it, or the some of the Sinai should always be going up to combine our spirituality and our physicality as one, not to just be hermits. We should always be constantly go up and to imbue everything we do with holiness. So the Chananah and the Kasha,